Right. Hello, everyone. This is Mr. Brass, and this is another Brass Discussions. And a returning guest is um, Laura W. from Twitter. How are you doing, my good friend?
So far, so good. We have all been fed and we are settled in for the night. So,
Nice. Um, just to let the audience, could you tell the audience a little bit about yourself in case, they haven't watched the other two things we recorded together?
yeah, it's been a while since I've been on your show, actually. But I'm Bumpstock Barbie on X or Twitter, however you refer to it as. I write for Twitchy. My husband and I host Front Porch Forensics also. Uh, I don't know. I mean, would you really call me a conservative or more of a libertarian with conservative leanings?
I always say libertarian.
I mean, I think that's probably the best way to go about it because I'm very live and let live. So,
Yeah. I mean, that's how I've always gotten the impression.
yeah, I mean, as long as what you're doing, I always say whatever floats your boat, as long as it doesn't sink mine or anyone else's.
Yeah. Um, that's what I've always liked about you.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I'm not one of those sticklers for like, oh, you have to believe this to be a conservative or you have to believe this to be XYZ. Like, I don't do all that.
yeah, I remember, that's speaking of to what I just did recently where I messaged back to Blair White on Twitter about um she had said something about how liberals will say that conservatives only care about rich people, and then the next minute out of the liberals' mouth, they say, "Oh, we have to hear what Beyonce and Taylor Swift are saying."
Oh, absolutely. And that's a ridiculous thing going around right now. Like Taylor Swift, I mean, she made her name by choosing the wrong person.
Yeah,
Like
I mean, at this,
99% of her songs are about choosing the wrong person. So maybe we should not listen to her.
I mean, she has a history of choosing bad men. She
Yeah.
endorsed Biden. What does that tell you?
Well, now she's endorsing Kamala. That's a little bit of a break from her norm. She's endorsing the wrong woman. So,
Yeah, I mean, I will say that I would absolutely love if Trump wins against Kamala, simply because it would be the second time Trump got into office by beating a woman.
yeah. And I mean, it would have been the first woman president. Like you would think that the left and everybody, wanted to make history and everything by voting for Hillary, but they just apparently didn't turn out right. So
Yeah,
I'm kind of hoping that's the way it goes this time, but I'm not entirely sure because Kamala is quote unquote, well, she's a black woman or she's an Indian woman, depending on the day, I think. So
um,
that gives them
well,
a little bit more incentive. And plus, like, basically the entire Democratic platform is, hey, vote for us, we're not Trump. That's all
yeah.
they got going for them.
Although I will say, like I said about Blair White's thing, I also retweeted it because I like to be snarky on there. And what I said is conservatives 1 minute, they say celebrities should shut their mouths and get out of politics. The next, and conservatives also say, "Oh, we need to elect a celebrity for president for the second time, and we have to have Hulk Hogan speak at our conventions."
Well, I mean, I don't understand either side saying, like, get the celebrities out of politics because that is how you reach, like, a wider base. I mean,
Well, yeah,
that's
and
just, that's good marketing in general. So,
well, yeah. I mean, and that and celebrities and celebrities are American celebrities are just about as much American as anyone else. So I mean, they have First Amendment rights to speak for for whoever they want to be president. So I
Yeah, but
mean,
for the most part with celebrities, I'm like, look, we don't pay you for your personal opinions. Just shut up and dance, monkey.
yeah. Well, what's funny is like that's a thing that I've seen about on the right, where like the right will say that the left is all about canceling and that there's no canceling on the right. And I like to point out that during George W. Bush's presidency, um, people tried to conservatives tried to cancel the Dixie Chicks because they criticized the Iraq War and George W. Bush.
Well, hey, we were kind of successful in that. I mean, they dropped off basically the face of the planet after that.
Yeah, well, that and they also tried like funny enough, I always do like how this went full circle. That uh, conservatives also tried canceling J.K. Rowling for the Harry Potter books because they said that they were encouraging demo-
Witchcraft and stuff. Like, I actually remember that because we had to read it when the books first came out. I was in seventh or eighth grade, I think. And there was like this big to do about our English class having that as required reading. Like, my mom got in on it.
ah
But I mean, that kind of stuff was never really my thing. So, like, yes, I read the book for the class and everything, but I
yeah
actually did not read the entire series or actually understand, like, even what it was all about until what, just a few years ago, you think?
yeah
When I got all the books from a friend of ours.
About 3 years ago.
Yeah, and I read them all, and of course I got into it because I mean it's a great story. So, but
yeah
I do remember when it first came out. Like, my mom was even one of the people that was like, "Oh no, our kids shouldn't be reading this. It shouldn't be in the classroom. None of that."
yeah. I just thought it was pretty funny how to see how things was like turn around because originally it was conservatives that were bashing J.K. Rowling and now it's all the liberals that are doing it.
Well, it's because she's stating just obvious facts that I think most everybody would normally agree with, but we're not living in normal times anymore because the left has gone so insane that
Yeah.
everything has become like a parody of itself, essentially.
Yeah. I just always thought that that was really I just thought, how the times have changed.
I mean, everything always comes full circle. I always say God has a sense of humor.
Yeah. I just thought it was really funny about how that stuff works. And I mean, I think personally, if I was in J.K. Rowling's shoes, I would probably do the same thing because she has enough FU money where she does like she's immune from being canceled.
I think she's even said that, like, I've got FU money if y'all want to come for me. And I'm like, this is how you do it.
And I will say a thing that I do like, you can disagree with her politics or whatever, but a thing that you got to give J.K. Rowling is that she actually like she's a self-made um like billionaire or multi-millionaire woman.
Right.
So
Yeah,
I mean,
before Harry Potter, like, nobody ever knew who she was.
yeah,
Now
and
the left is even finding like her pseudonyms and everything and trying to boycott those books too. And I'm like, y'all are giving her money because you're giving her this almost endorsement. You're giving her the attention. You're giving her the free marketing.
yeah, and I
If
also
you
like to
shut
point out,
up, then she'd probably just disappear into obscurity because Harry Potter's kind of a niche thing and it's not a big deal these days.
well, I mean, they have a new video game that's came out about it where they did the whole Quidditch thing.
Yeah, I mean they'll still do stuff like that, but again, it's a very niche thing.
They're about to release a series too.
They're about to release a series
I
on
mean,
the Harry
Disney,
Potter,
yeah, I
or,
think Disney's doing it.
so they're gonna do like kind of a mini series type thing, like episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I didn't even know that. So
yeah, I mean, what's funny about it as well is that the Daniel Radcliffe who played Harry Potter in the movies, like
yeah,
him and the rest of the cast have all had to come out in defense of the woke mob and say, "Hey, we don't enforce what J.K. Rowling is saying." And I'm like, "You're actors. You get
I must
paid."
say, I mean, It doesn't matter. You're an actor. You're playing a role. Like, you shouldn't have to defend the views of the person who like made the story. Like,
Yeah,
you were just hired to play a part. That's literally it. It does not mean that you believe the exact same things. I don't know why that has to be said these days.
I know. I mean, it's sort of like, I mean, it would be like if I acted in a, trying to think of what his name is, like, I, the the guy that wrote Animal Farm and stuff.
Oh gosh, if you hadn't said that, I would have been able to.
Yeah,
Who's Animal Farm? That's gonna
I
drive me nuts now.
yeah. Also, is that
Who'd you
wait,
say? What'd you say? Oh,
Animal Farm, the book.
George Orwell.
Orwell, yeah.
yeah, Orwell. Yeah, that's who he is.
The
And
very Orwellian stuff. That's what we usually always talk about. That's what we're living through right now.
Mm-hmm.
and what I've always said that's funny about it is like if well, I mean, what I was getting at is if I was an actor and I was playing in a like an animated role as like a character in the movie Animal Farm, in a movie adaptation of Animal Farm, like I don't think I would have to point out to everyone that I'm not a socialist like Orwell was.
I mean, I still go back. I reread 1984 again just a few months back, and it's, I would say it's amazing the similarities that we're actually witnessing, but it's actually more scary than it is anything else. Like, this was not ever meant to be, you know, a like manuscript on how to do things. It was not a how-to manual.
Would you say that 1984 has become the right's Handmaid's Tale?
No, because we actually understand the book. Like, the left with the Handmaid's Tale, it's ridiculous because those women fought tooth and nail to protect and keep the children that they conceived through the rapes that they experienced. And yes, it absolutely was rape and everything. But Margaret Atwood, she wrote this book and everything just because every dystopian novel up until that point was basically a leftist utopia, or, kind of a version of it. The socialism, everything was very, very left leaning at the time. So she created this kind of Christian theocratic hierarchy for her book. But these women, no matter what they were put through, they were fighting like hell to keep their children, to save their children.
Yeah,
So that's why, like, it's so funny to me every time a leftist, the awfuls, the affluent white urban female leftists, they always go with, "Oh my God, you're going to turn it into a handmaid's tale because we're not allowed to kill our children while they're in utero." Like, you don't understand this story at all.
yeah. And to me, it's like a thing that always gets with dystopian things is how unrealistic sometimes it can be.
Yeah.
Um, like,
1984, though, like, became very realistic
yeah,
alarmingly quickly. Like, I mean, we're witnessing the left trying to do this right now.
Even using the same language.
Yeah, they're doing the same, like, double speak or new speak for everything. Like, we've seen them try to redefine words like racism, sexism, transphobia. We've seen them try to redefine words like inflation just to
and
protect Biden. Like,
and
we're witnessing newspeak being written in real time, and it is so freaking scary.
yeah. Well, you know what's the good thing about being a misogynist? You can actually define what a woman is.
Oh yeah, then I guess that makes again a newspeak. I guess that makes me a misogynist because
Yeah, pretty much. Standards are pretty low these days for what counts as a misogynist.
speaking of like the what is a woman thing, did you see like there have been four major X accounts that have deleted their accounts since Matt Walsh's upcoming movie, Am I a Racist?
Oh yeah, I've heard. I mean, I've seen a lot of the ads. I didn't watch the movie yet.
No, the movie I don't think is out just yet. I think it is coming out like in a couple of weeks. But even just with the trailer and everything, like there are several, at least four that I know of, major leftist accounts on X that have deleted their entire accounts because of this, because he names them in the movie. He interviews them.
Yeah. I know like that I can't remember her name. I know she did the anti-white fragility thing. Like I think her
It's
name is like
Sarah something.
I think it's like yeah, I think it's something like that. But I know what was funny is that he had actually gotten her. Matt Walsh had actually gotten her to give him reparation money.
That's hilarious. I absolutely like, I know there's not a lot of stuff that like I disagree with him on. I disagree with him on like his stance on mental health and everything. But for the most part, I swear to God, that man is the most genius troll on the planet.
Well, I mean, you obviously disagree with his Catholicism as well.
Yeah, I mean, I have my issues with Catholicism, and I think that's pretty widely known. I don't talk about it a lot, but like I'm not afraid to talk about it. It just rarely ever comes up on my feeds.
I will say though that the good thing I do like about Matt Walsh is more tolerable when it comes to the religious matters than say Michael Knowles. I really don't like him.
Oh, the movie does release tomorrow. Okay, so yeah, the I'm a Racist apparently drops tomorrow. So,
We
and hopefully they'll do kind of a thing they did with some of their other movies and let you stream it for free for a certain amount of time. Because
and I
that's what I definitely want to watch.
yeah, and I can maybe figure out a way to bootleg it or something.
Well, don't be admitting that like publicly.
I know. Of course I would never do that. I'm a good boy. I'm just saying that that's what someone might do. I didn't say I would specifically do that, but yeah,
Yeah, once it's on the internet's forever. So
yeah. But I mean, but I do like the topic that I wanted to go over because I did find that I think that there are misunderstandings when it comes to my positions on things and like about gender dynamics and about male leadership. I think a lot of times there's misunderstandings about where I'm coming from on those issues. And I thought that it would be good to have like this little platform where we could talk about the issue. And, I think overall we would probably agree more than we would disagree on
yeah,
the
I
issue.
think so.
But I do know that like some people, especially the more conservative Christian types, do really get on me for it. But a
Well, I mean,
lot of
as a conservative Christian, like, yes, there are specific roles that are like delineated between men and women in the Bible. So, I do hold that belief that when it comes to certain things, like men are more equipped for it or women are more equipped for it. And that's the way we were created. We were supposed to be that way.
yeah, and I don't really even dispute that. Like a lot of times when it comes down to relationship dynamics that I go over that people misconstrue is like people like this is an example like where I will say that I believe a woman cheating is worse than a man cheating in terms of consequences. And people would say, "Oh, well, you're saying it's great for men to cheat." I never have said that. I've said multiple times that men or women cheating is bad. I
Yeah,
because
no matter who's doing it, it's wrong.
yeah, my stance was what I had said that got people angry at me is I said in turn like if we're just like we're in a vacuum and we're just addressing like a situation where we have on one situation a man cheating on his wife in another situation where a woman's cheating on her husband. I have said that like in terms of like the consequences that could come about from it, I believe that it's worse for the woman's like on the woman's side for doing it.
Well, if it's
And
a husband and wife thing, the woman actually has the upper hand. I mean, she can leave the guy. She can get alimony. She can get, if there are children, she can get child support payments. Like, the man
here's
is going to suffer more for his indiscretion than I think a woman would.
yeah. Well, my point was with that is like I give this analogy, like we would both agree that cutting off someone's arm for no reason is wrong. And we would also agree that cutting off someone's hand for no reason is also wrong by like the same principles.
Yeah.
We would acknowledge that while the same principle would apply to both cutting off someone's arm and cutting off someone's hand, we could say for sure that cutting off someone's arm is worse than cutting off someone's hand.
I mean, the whole arm and everything that gets into, yeah, it's way more intensive then. I mean, they lose it with at least a hand. You can get like a decent prosthetic and everything. And depending on the arm, like you can get a prosthetic too, but you're not going to have the full range of motion
Yeah.
hand
And
versus arm. So,
so my point has always been like, because I've always said multiple times that I think cheating is wrong on both parties because I believe, for one, it's dishonest and a breach of trust when
yeah,
you do that.
100%.
And I've also said that I also think it's pointless because if you're truly at the point in your relationship where you're so unhappy with each other that you're willing to step outside of the relationship, then just end the relationship.
Oh, I completely agree with that. 100%.
Yeah, like don't like if you're at the point where you have met someone and you're considering having and you're just at the point in your relationship where you guys are just completely done, then don't cheat, just end the relationship and get with the other person. That's what I've always said. And what people got mad at me for is I said that in the range of like that, like in the vacuum, I said it was worse for women. And the reason why I said that is because when a man cheats on a woman, he does not in any way put at risk like the woman's possibility of being a mother to her, like to a child, like in terms of biology. Like if a man were to cheat on his wife with four virgin women and he got every one of them pregnant and his wife was already had a child by him, well, him cheating on his wife in no way, makes calls into question the woman's possible biological relation to her child.
Well, that kind of reduces women down to just a biological function too, then.
Well, I mean, I'm saying that like in the term of the difference. Whereas if a woman were to have sex with four other guys and get pregnant, well, now you have a situation where it's like one of five guys that could be the child, like be the father of that child, and you do actually in that situation make the father's like it sort of undermines like the confidence the man can have in being a like knowing that he's the father.
Well,
So
again, you're kind of putting the man's then almost ego and making a woman just down to her biological function. That's all her purpose is here.
well, I don't think it's
It's
about
for the
like
man's pride and ego in being a father, fathering a child and everything. That's the important part. It seems like that's what you're kind of reducing that down to.
eh, I mean, I say that it's more about because there is like identity when it comes to biological relations. Now, that's obviously not to say that, like, for example, like in your case with Daniel and stuff, where Daniel and the tiny tyrant are not biologically related, but he is, for all intents and purposes, the father of tiny tyrant because he's assumed the role of father.
Well, that,
And
and I mean, he's done that since she was 3 years old. I mean,
yeah,
he's the father that she's always known. I mean, she had a bio dad and everything, but he treated that more as a
Yeah,
Oh, I get to be the fun dad. I don't have to actually be like any kind of parental figure, you know?
and I agree. And I agree, and I do think that's very noble that he did that. And but I would say, like, of course there are good stepdads that do that, but when a when a guy like Daniel does that, I mean, he's going into the situation knowing that he's not the biological father, and he's still taking on that. He's willingly taking on that role. Whereas with
And
a man,
again, that goes more against biology and just more to the heart of the matter. Like, it doesn't matter that he's not biologically connected to her. Like you said, for all intents and purposes, he is her dad, and he has been for what is it now? 12 years we're going on.
yeah,
So
and
I mean, he has raised this child, and yes, he chose to do that and everything, which I think that actually in this case matters way more than biology does.
yeah. Well,
Because
my point was,
biological father didn't even choose to step up. So
yeah. Well, my point was more so that, like, in his case, it was more of it's a choice that he made. But whereas in the situation where I talk, like, with women cheated on her husband or whatever, like, there are very often times when, like, the man has raised this child believing that the child is his for 10, 12, or so years.
I'll
And
find out later that they're not.
yeah, like,
Now, I've heard those cases, and I think that's incredibly shitty on the woman's part.
yeah,
Like, I don't understand how somebody could do that.
I know, like, this one recent case with a pastor, even where he had, like, he he's a 70-year-old man and his children are in their 50s, and his children needed a blood, like, a donation or something, like they had to have their needed a kidney transplant or whatever.
Yeah.
And the father, he was perfectly willing to do that for his children, to give up, like, his organ or whatever for his child. But in order to do that, they had to, do DNA test and compatibility. And it
Right.
turned out he's not actually the father. So he's raised these kids for 50 years. I mean, he's been known as the dad for these children for 50 years, and found out that no, he's not actually the father, and that his wife actually had an affair all those years ago.
Yeah, that's to me that's traumatic as hell. I mean, like it is absolutely different for women. Like you 100% know if that child is yours or not because they literally came out of your body.
Yeah,
But I mean, for a man and everything, you obviously are supposed to trust your spouse and everything. And to find out all those years later, I mean, this is like a lifetime later. I mean, you've got like grandkids at this point. And it turns out you find out through complete accident that these are not actually biologically your children or your grandchildren. That is traumatic.
yeah. And I just thought it was, for I said that's the sort of the difference in terms of effects, because, like, a man can't lie. Like, the only time I could ever think about a situation where a man could do anything similar to that to a woman would be, is like if he had a baby with a mistress and then swapped it out with the mother in the ward or something, and made the woman think that the baby of his mistress was actually hers.
Yeah, I mean that's probably so rare as to be more of a
Yeah.
Hollywood movie type situation.
I mean, that's the only thing I could even think of that where it could come down to that sort of.
Yeah, but that ultimately boils down to just kind of an emotional issue. I mean, and especially, I mean, cheating in general is bad no matter who does it. But if
Yeah.
there are children involved, then that kind of compounds things. But it's still a very emotional consequence to it.
Well,
And
I also,
I
like,
wouldn't even say that like men suffer more emotional consequences from being cheated on than they do from being the cheater. Like, I mean, their emotional harm is happening no matter who does it.
Yeah. And like I said, I obviously, like, that's people got on me because was pointing, like, to where I was thinking of the differences. And I was more just saying that, like, in terms of parental certainty, like, a man's cheating doesn't put, like, the it's not like if you had found out that your, like, Tiny Tyrant's biological dad cheated on you with another woman, that you'd be saying, "Oh, well, man, I have to get a DNA test to see if Tiny Tyrant's actually my daughter." Like, you know for a fact
Oh,
she is.
well, because he was cheating, he actually did always accuse me of cheating. So there was a period of time where he was like, I don't even know if she's mine or not. And I'm like, dude, come on.
Oh, oh, trust me, I have that situation with my dad. Like, and it was funny as hell too because, like, it was 16 years into it, and my dad had gotten with another woman. Um, and the woman got in his ear and was telling him that, maybe I'm not his child. And I'm like, bruh, like, if I've shown you pictures of my dad and I've shown you pictures of my sister, like, on my dad's daughter, and I've showed you pictures of my nephew, like my dad's daughter's child, and we all look exactly the same.
Yeah. My little brother, he is the exact same way. I found in some of the boxes of photos that my mom had given me, I found some pictures of my dad when he was probably like 18 or 19. And I swear to God, he is my little brother, like identically.
Yeah,
And I look like my aunt Nita on that side of the family. Like I look so much like her. Like those genes, you cannot deny us. Those genes are very strong.
yeah, and yeah, obviously, and I think that is when it comes to, like, relationship dynamics. And for me, like, I've always said that if anyone can say one thing about me, they know that I'm not a traditionalist when it comes to, like, relationships and stuff like that. Now, I've gone over issues that I have with, like, what people conceive of as traditional in modern relationships. And to be fair, I've also gone over, like, issues with non-traditional relationships too. And I've always said that it's ultimately a choice that I think men and women have to make for themselves, like, how they want their relationship to go. And I merely go at it from the standpoint that I want people to have all the information and they can make an honest, informed decision on how they want their relationship to be.
Yeah, I mean, honesty and communication are key to any relationship, man, woman, whatever you identify as. It doesn't matter. You have to
Yeah,
be honest.
yeah.
Like no matter what it is. I don't care if you're in like one of those polyamorous relationships where there's like four of you. You still
Even in,
have to have the honesty and communication there.
yeah, and even in those situations, you would probably have to be more because you're dealing with more people.
Yeah, I mean it's that's why I don't understand that. Like I have a hard enough time keeping up with Daniel, so
You know that's right.
Yeah, and I mean, I remember I was with my ex fiance at the time, and, like, we had gone over because I think she had, like, a guy that cheated on her in the past or something. And I told her that she would never have to worry about me cheating on her. Be- and she said, "Oh, because you're a really faithful guy and very honest." I said, "No, I just really don't like dealing with people."
yeah, that's actually kind of my thing too. Like I've already got him trained. I don't have time to train somebody else. I'm not gonna bother.
Yeah, like, that's that's how I've said it. Is like, I I am as antisocial as one could possibly be. I have said that Like, you don't have to worry about me cheating because it's already stressful enough to have to get with one person. Trying to do it again is like, I honestly think that should count as a punishment, if anything.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. I think there was actually one time, it was back when I was still bartending, and I want to say it was at Shelby's. You may remember this, babe.
Mhm.
But there was this guy, this drunk guy, that just kept coming up to the bar and hitting on me and everything. And finally, the last time he did it and asked for my phone number, I just looked at him and said, "Ew," and walked away.
Yeah,
I didn't even know what else to say. It was just, "Ew, no."
yeah. And yeah, and that's sort of how I get with it. And like, I think dating as a whole these days has gotten worse in many ways. And I've actually rebutted some points that people have made about dating websites where they will say stuff like, oh, well, dating websites don't reflect reality. And I say, you're right, they don't. Reality's actually worse.
I say on a dating website, I mean, everybody's trying to be on their best. Like their best photo, like the best parts about them. Like you
Well,
don't actually get a good image or a good feel for who this person actually is unless you actually interact with them in real life.
and here's the thing that I pointed out. Like, the common thing that people in the red pill space will point out is like women on dating websites will reject way more men than men will reject women on there. And people will say that that doesn't reflect reality. And I'm like, yeah, it does. Like, it
Yeah,
does.
I would absolutely say that as women are very, very picky when it comes to, I mean, I don't care if you're a lesbian, you're straight, whatever. You're way, as a woman, you're way pickier about the partner that you choose because you are kind of going more for looks in,
Yeah,
like, just as far as first impressions.
yeah.
Like, you're
Well,
going based off of appearance, physical appearance. Guys, not really so picky about all that. I mean, like, if you're
like,
moderately attractive, a guy is going to give you the time of day.
well, hell, even if you're not moderately attractive, if a guy has enough drinks in him, you become moderately attractive.
Yeah, as a former bartender, I saw a lot of those like 2 a.m. last call pickups. So,
Yeah. Uh, oh, I made the joke that you'll probably get this. What's the difference between a bisexual woman and a straight woman?
this is that one you sent me earlier, isn't
Yeah, two shots.
it? I don't know. I mean, I never like there are some women that I find very, very attractive, but it's not like in a sexual way. Like I just acknowledge, like, oh my God, yes, you're a gorgeous woman. Like I understand this, but I've
Yeah,
never actually even drunk. Like and I was very, very close to my best friend for a long time, but there was never a moment, and we got drunk a lot together when we were younger. But there was never that kind of
yeah,
experimentation, I guess. I don't know.
yeah. Well, what I've always found interesting is that there is a lot of double standards, I think, when it comes to like women and men's sexual relationships and stuff like that. Like, a woman could have a complete lesbian phase, like a lesbian sort of thing all throughout college where she gets with tons of women and stuff like that. And then she could just quit and say, oh, well, that was just a phase that I'm going through and now get with men and get married and all that stuff.
Right.
Whereas,
I was just experimenting.
whereas if a man were to just say that, oh, I just kissed a dude once in college, well, he's gay for life now.
Yeah, no, I see that one. Like that's definitely a very common trope, I guess.
Yeah,
So yeah, men definitely I think homosexual men are way more stigmatized than homosexual women because Other than, I think lesbian porn is definitely like way more popular. I mean, even among straight people, I think that's way more common than like gay men.
I know the funniest thing about lesbian pornography that women are actually watch more lesbian pornography than men do.
I've actually heard that was the case, that women watch more than men do.
Like when it comes to lesbian pornography and BDSM, women beat men out in watching that.
Yeah, I have no idea about the actual like percentages there, but that really probably wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
people always talk about like men are way more sexual than women. Like, no, women, we're just as sexual. I mean, it just comes out in different ways, I guess.
yeah, and I've always made this sort of funny joke. I mean, it's not. It's sort of serious to point out a double standard as well, but like you'll get conservatives like Matt Walsh and anyone from the Daily Wire that will say pornography is wrong and it's destroying men. And I will, retweet and I will say, "Oh, so are you guys going to go after erotic novels as
Yeah,
well?"
no, that is 100% pornography for women. I mean, that was always. It reminds me of that Friends episode where Joey finds Rachel's book in her bed underneath her pillow. And he keeps laughing at her, and she's like, there's nothing wrong with a woman enjoying a little erotica. And he just starts cracking up. He goes, "You got porn." And that's 100% what it is.
Yeah. And I've, you know, and I've always just found that I've said that men watch porn, but women read porn.
And I'm sorry, like, I have read some of these books sometimes. I'm not into them at all because of that. Like, I don't even really like it in Stephen King or Dean Koontz novels where there's like the sexual scenes or whatever. Because I'm like, okay, get back to the story. Like, I need to understand what's going on here. Like, I don't need to see them in bed or anything that's irrelevant to the plot here.
Yeah.
But yeah, Daniel, he gets uncomfortable about it even in movies.
Yeah.
Because yeah, that's what he's saying right now. He said it adds nothing to the story, nothing to the plot line. It's just kind of that gratuitous thing that they throw in there.
Yeah. And yeah, I always thought it's sort of funny how, and the reason why, in my opinion, that more conservatives don't go after erotic novels than they do porn and stuff like that is because, like, video pornography is simply because women make up the majority of voters in America. And conservatives know very well that if they legitimately did try to ban erotic novels, they would never win another election.
Well, I mean, even if the left tried to do that, I wouldn't like. I'd be speaking out against it because it's a violation of the First Amendment. Like, look, I'm sorry, you don't have to like these books, so just don't read them. Like, nobody's making you read them.
Yeah, I've pointed out is like all the typical problems that conservatives will point out with video pornography. Like you can easily find those exact same arguments when you're talking about erotic novels. Like for the whole giving people unrealistic expectations.
Yeah, I mean, it. All of this is like porn or erotic novels and everything. All it is a fantasy.
Yeah,
Real life is never going to measure up to the fantasy. So it is like pornography, erotic novels, like no matter what form the pornography comes in, it does not matter. It is screwing people up because they're thinking, okay, this is what's normal. And that's not what's normal, like by any stretch of the imagination.
so wait, what you're saying, Laura, is that you don't think you could get with a 6'5" millionaire guy that
I mean,
has that has
I got the 6'3" Viking right here in the kitchen, so I mean I'm doing pretty good.
oh, true that. Like I like Santa. Um, yeah. So I mean, I've always just found it funny, and it's it's funny because when it comes to the like, I just hate the double standards when it comes to it because I mean, like literally, video pornography is the only porn like the only sex well outside of prostitution where men actually consume more than women on it. Like if you're talking about sex toys, erotic novels, and all of that, yeah, women actually pay more for that than men do.
That's why, like, the sex toy industry and everything is geared way more towards women.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many options for women. It's almost mind-boggling. And then, you got the handful that are for men. So,
Yeah. And I'm always surprised whenever I hear about one. It's because it's so rare that I actually see anything for like men when it comes to that stuff.
yeah,
Like,
even in advertisements, like you see the ads or whatever that may pop up ever so often when you're browsing, and it's always, something for a woman.
well, yeah, and I and what's funny is that they're actually a thing that I've gotten into arguments is when I've criticized women that were in the industry and came out of it, and they started making a lot of claims about the industry and stuff that I think there is truth to it, but I also think that a lot of times the women are playing stupid with it.
I,
And
I don't know. I mean, everything I know about the pornography industry is extremely predatory towards women. And there's a lot of times like they give you this, especially these young girls, they give you this idea that it's this glamorous thing, like you're going to make so much money and you're going to be so happy and everything. And they get you to do these absolutely demeaning, degrading things. And you really don't have a choice once you sign a contract. Like you have to do it, or else you're in breach of that contract and they can sue you into oblivion. And
well,
like when you actually break it down, the pornography industry is extraordinarily predatory towards women.
yeah, well, I do like to tell people like that when they do bring that point up, it's that there's really two different like branches when it comes to the like video pornography industry. There's the more mainstream films, and then there's just the underground films. And the thing is that the mainstream films, they tend to be more popular, but they're not as what how you would say risque
Yeah,
when it
the
comes.
mainstream, they kind of nowadays, especially the mainstream, they have these kind of guidelines that they
Yeah,
have to adhere to.
and
So, as far like if you're going to get into just like if you're, a young woman or a young man and you're looking into this as a career thing for some reason, go into the mainstream because there are contracts, there are rules, there are guidelines. It is not quite as predatory as it was. But you get into the underground stuff, I mean, 99.999% of probably what's on Pornhub right now is extraordinarily abusive towards the girls that are in these videos.
well, I
And
like to
those girls
point out,
don't have a say.
yeah, well, I like to point out is like a lot of like there was some I can't remember what it was. Ron Jeremy and a porn actress were having a debate with a pastor, and like they were all friends and stuff. They all were friends, and they've known each other for
Ron
years.
Jeremy is friends with a pastor.
Oh yeah, he's a really well.
That's so weird.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, the pastor wanted like the pastor obviously like the pastor believes he's a Christian and he believes that people can be saved, and he obviously hopes from his relationship with Ron Jeremy he could change him. And Ron Jeremy is sort of a laid back liberal sort of dude. So his main thing is he says, like, I really don't care at all what your religious beliefs are. Like, he says, like, the vast majority of women and men that he know in the industry all claim to believe in God.
Yeah,
Of
that doesn't surprise me. I mean, Christianity is one of the biggest religions, but I would say, and I shared this video just a few days ago of this woman on that really I can't remember the name of it now. That one really popular podcast, but
Fresh Prince.
she was an OnlyFans model, I guess is what you would call them. I don't know.
Yeah.
But she wore a cross, and he was asking her, do you take the cross off when you're doing this stuff? She's like, no. And he was like, well, do you believe in God? And she said, yeah, I believe in God. And he said, so what do you think God would think about you doing porn? She was like, I think he would want me to do it. And, Satan wouldn't want me to do it. You're looking at me like, Daniel's looking at me like I'm crazy. I need to show him this video later because she is actually saying this.
Uh,
Like that God wants her to be happy, and that's why she's doing it. So he said, okay, so what do you think Satan would tell you? He said Satan would tell me to stop. And he just kind of stops for a second and looks completely flustered because what do you do with that?
yeah. I mean, yeah, it is something like that I see. I know what the one you were talking about.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but I had to laugh for a minute because you guys said, like, you said you wanted to show Daniel the video, and I'm like, I mean, I hope you're talking about the Twitter one and not the OnlyFans
Yeah,
one.
no, I'm talking about like the actual Twitter interview where she's saying all this.
I mean, if you guys are doing that together, who am I to keep shame?
I don't know. I mean, not to get too blue or anything, but we don't really play around with stuff like that. We don't
Yeah,
need it for one thing, but that's a whole
yeah,
different story. So,
yeah. That's what automatically came up in my mind. So I just started busting out laughing a bit.
like, I would be upset if I found him like subscribing to some OnlyFans pages or watching porn. So, I'm not gonna sit here and say like, "Hey, look at
I had
this."
to get you to explain what OnlyFans was because I didn't know what
Oh,
it
that's
was.
right. Yeah, for a long time he didn't even know what OnlyFans
I just
was.
thought it was like another,
Like streaming service
yeah,
type
like
deal.
another Instagram type thing. I
Yeah.
didn't know.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I mean, I think you can do like very, very G and PG
Yeah, the
stuff.
OnlyFans doesn't necessarily mean it's going
Yeah,
to be
it
porn or
doesn't
anything.
have to be porn, but it's been kind of overrun by
And there's
porn.
one other one called Fansly or something too,
yeah,
like that.
The tiny tyrant walked in at the wrong moment because she just gave me a very weird
There's
look.
another one called Fansly, apparently also. Fansly.
I don't know that I know about that one.
I'm assuming it's the same thing as
What are y'all
OnlyFans.
talking about?
A lot of everything, basically.
yeah,
Interesting.
As she comes out, she's like, "What are y'all talking about right now?"
yeah. I mean, this is the more rated R section of the conversation.
I mean, she's heard us talk about stuff like this because I mean, as a teenager and with a phone and everything, we have to warn her about these sites. We have to give her the heads up. Like this is you're going to be exposed to this no matter what, even if it's looking it up on your own or your friends exposing you to it. You're going to see it, and like this is not reality. This is not how relationships actually are or are supposed to be.
Yeah, and I've always just found it sort just like interesting how relationship dynamics go and a lot of double standards that I do see. And a common criticism that I do get often, and I think it's less true now than it's probably been in years, where people say that I just go after women and I don't really talk about like mistakes that men make, like in relationships. I think that's like one could probably make the argument that that was more true for me maybe about a year or two ago,
Yeah.
but today I go after like tradcon men and some of the stuff that they say probably about equally as much as I do women.
The way
So
I see it is every relationship is different, so that should go on an individual case by case basis. because it's not either always a woman or always a man. Sometimes it's one or the other. Sometimes it's a combination of both. Usually, like it's just
Well,
not something like that can be pinned on a certain group based on their sex or whatever else.
well,
Relationships are one on one. It's a hopefully one on one. I mean, I'm not big into the polygamy and everything because that
and
just to me that's way more complicated.
I mean, quite frankly, I've said polygamy should count as torture for men.
Yeah, but it's the men that are choosing it too. Like, I
I
think if
think,
Daniel were given the option to have like three of me, he's going to be like, no, one of you is enough.
yeah,
Don't look at me like that.
yeah.
He just looked up and like nodded real fast, like, yeah.
I don't think he could afford it.
Hey,
I
I'm
remember,
pretty good about finances. Like,
well,
I'm one of those wives that like just goes and spends everything on a shopping spree and whatnot. So,
but I've always found what's funny is like when people read, a lot of people will read up the. I noticed this pattern because I do Bible studies and stuff like that, and it was just a pattern that I recognized after reading about multiple times that whenever you see an Old Testament prophet or just notable figure in the Bible that's in a polygamous relationship where it's one man and multiple women, like 10 out of 10, it's always a rich man.
well, yeah, I mean, back during those times, that was a man that could afford stuff like that. So,
Yeah, because like let's think about the men in the Bible that actually did have more than one wife.
keep in
Moses,
mind the dowry too. I mean, they were literally like paying her father and everything for her hand in marriage. So they had to have resources.
that's bride's worth. The dowry is what they pay the man.
Okay, well, whatever it was, like they were having to give like the bride's dad a certain number of whatever livestock they had or whatever riches they had for her
Yeah,
hand and everything. So
yeah.
the richest, the wealthiest men had the most wives.
And the thing is like even in like I pointed this out and people do find it shocking is that even in cultures that are how very accepting of male promiscuity and sexuality and have polygamy and stuff like that, only like the max number of percentage of men in the population that actually participate in it is 30%. That's the max. So
Well, I think
this
even men in general, I think they also want the same connection that like we as women do. Like
and
we
please,
want that emotional connection with a partner. We want somebody who is on the same page as us and wants the same things and
yeah,
has the same goals. Like I think y'all want that just as much as we do.
yeah. A lot of times what I have found with men that go into polygamous marriages and stuff like that, a lot of times it's tradition that does that sort of stuff. Like
Right.
what's expected of like if a man gets a lot of money or comes into a lot of money, a lot of times even his family will tell him to do it. And sometimes, funny enough, the wife he has will actually recommend him do it. Um, and like, because here's the thing that people don't talk about in some polygamous cultures is that you will have the main wife, which will be the first wife, and the wives that come after it will be like her underlings.
Oh yeah, you've got the head basically, and
And
she kind of is the one that takes care of the other ones.
yeah, and it's funny is because that's why, like it's been said that many women they're the ones that actually, are the ones that tell the men to bring in like another woman into the marriage because if they have another woman in there, they can get the woman to do stuff that they don't want to do.
Well, you got to think about it too. I mean, even Okay, I'll go back to me and Daniel as kind of an example here. Like, he is the head of our household. He just is. That's biblically his role. Ultimately, the decisions and everything for what goes on with our family come down to him. But at the same time, I always say, yes, he wears the pants in the relationship, but I'm the one that controls the zipper.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, like, I actually have this other guy that in the red pill space that his marriage works like a traditional marriage, and basically how it goes is that he gets the final word on things, but what happens is that his wife will make him, so like if a problem arises, his wife will give him like what she thinks should be done.
Yeah, I mean,
And
we still get our input and everything, and he's supposed to listen to us and consider, what we say. But yes, ultimately, the final decision comes down to him in a biblical marriage, anyway.
yeah, well, what happens is that this guy, he says, like, a problem will come and his wife will come up to him and say, this is her suggestion, and he'll say, huh, you know what, your way is actually much better than what I was thinking of. Or he'll say, you know what, I think it's a good idea, but I think we should go this other way. And the woman will just, his wife will just tell him, all right, I trust you, I'll go with what you say.
I mean,
Because
that's how it is, like in mine and Daniel's marriage. Like, if I trust his judgment.
yeah.
I mean, it's, you know, when
And
it
I think
comes
that,
down to, if he says that he thinks that something is best for our family, I'm going to trust him on that, because he's not going to want to do anything to hurt me or to hurt the tiny tyrant or hurt our family. So, yes, ultimately, if he says, I hear you, but I disagree, I think this is the way we should go, I'm going to say, okay, then that's the way we're going to go.
yeah. And I think that's like people misconstrue submissiveness. Submissiveness is not about being a doormat. It's about giving up control and letting, like, trusting someone enough where you can, like, where you don't have to be in control.
Yeah, 100%. I absolutely agree with that. I mean, if you, and that's why I tell people all the time, like, you shouldn't even sleep with somebody that you're not willing to trust this way.
Yeah.
'Cause, I mean, God forbid you get pregnant or something. Now y'all got this kid that you have to raise together. You need to be able to trust that person. And I mean, the person I had a kid with, it did not work out that way. You know, at the time I wanted it to work out that way because that's just what I thought was right. But it
And
it didn't work that way, and I learned from it, and I'm trying to teach our daughter, do not settle. Like, I am absolutely, I would do it all over again if it meant having you in my life again. But if I could go back and change it, there is no way in hell I would have ever married that man.
yeah. And the thing is also that I bring up double standards also when it comes to abusive relationships, when it comes to men and women, where, like, in my case, like, I mean, it's all known that me, both, like, me, I know you, we both went through abusive relationships. And
Yeah.
my dynamic, and, like, I was sexually abused by an ex of mine. And I remember when I first came out to talk to people about it, it was my family I went to first to talk to them about it. And I remember, like, I would go to them, and, like, their first thing when I told them, they they sort of laughed
I
and
say
said,
that's actually kind of a common thing with men, and sexual abuse happens to men way more often than we talk about. But it's
yeah,
because, like, you see it happening, and, like, okay, especially in schools, you get like the hot teacher or whatever, and everybody's like, oh, I wish she was my teacher when I was in school. It's a very, very different dynamic when it comes
yeah,
to, like, men and boys being sexually abused, because they're like, oh, what, you didn't like it or something? Like, y'all are kind of mocked for it if you say that it was abuse.
yeah. And I've always thought that that was because the thing is like it wasn't so much that I wasn't believed that, but like if they had just because I'm a consistent person, like I'm always the kind of person where I believe innocent until proven guilty. And like I would say it wasn't so much that I wasn't believed that bothered me. Like if they would have came up to me and said, "Well, look, it's not that we don't believe you. It's like, do we have any like physical proof of it that we can work with?" And if that's would have been what it came down to, I would have actually, I would have been disappointed, but I would have understood. But it was more so that I went up to them and I told them, and it was like I told them 2 + 2 = 5.
Right. It was just that disbelief that
Like the possibility that it could even happen. That bothered me more. It would be one thing if they just did it like on evidentiary grounds, but it's
right,
another thing to just say that it just could not possibly have happened.
right, just to outright deny it.
And it's not like outright deny it because of impl like like they lived in a different state or something, but denying it simply because the sex of the people involved.
Was reversed, yeah.
And that's what always got me more with it. And that's sort of why I've been sort of vocal going and trying to get men help because I think a lot of times like what people like a lot of men that get abused, they tend to get abused when they're children. And very often it tends to be like a parental figure or someone that
Or
acts like a parental
I say
figure.
somebody, either family or somebody very close to the family.
Yeah. For men, that is. For women, it's a little bit more varied, but for men,
Yeah,
it's
usually it's still family or somebody close to the family, but at least for girls, like there is that aspect of, the stranger,
yeah,
and you, or, I say stranger, but it still could be like a teacher, a priest or something, somebody
yeah,
you still somewhat know and kind of trust, so they have that in already.
yeah. And
Usually
for
the stranger abuse, that means like abduction or something worse has happened. So
I think what many people don't realize about the child, like especially this rampant thing apparently where these female teachers are having these inappropriate sexual relationships with these underage boys.
then we seem to be seeing an uptick in that lately, or I don't know if it's just being reported more or if it is just happening more.
Yeah. I mean, we've been seeing that a lot more. And I get to the, and now obviously I say, innocent until proven guilty. Like if they're accused of it, obviously I want to see them go to trial. And if they are guilty of it, then yeah, I completely want them to be in prison for the rest of their lives, but that rarely ever happens.
Yeah.
A lot of times the worst, like there's this one woman that like public school teacher that like literally she was found guilty of it and she admitted to it, and she got her teaching license back in like 5 years.
See, that's absolutely ridiculous. Like if I was a parent and found out about that, like I would be a nuisance at the school.
Yeah. And to me, it's like people often don't realize that children don't really have a sense of the future of what actions I'm going to take today are going like how am I going to feel about it like 5 or 6 years down the line or maybe 10 years down the line.
You got to think about, I mean, the human brain is not really fully developed. It's the impulse control center of the brain that does not finish developing until about 25 years old. That's the last part of the brain to finish developing. So, no, they're not capable of thinking long term necessarily. Like, it is a very, especially if it's a female teacher and like a male student, If they're the older type of male student, in high school at least, you got these raging hormones and everything. And I'm sorry, they're not going to think, like, what is this going to do for my future if I let this teacher continue down this path with me?
Yeah. And I point out, it's like, well, I mean, you're a parent, so you could speak more to this, but there are times when you, as a parent, you have to let your children know when they want something, because you know that if they do that thing, they're going to get sick, or there's something that's going to be wrong happening to them. You have to
Yeah,
be the adult and
we've
tell your
done that,
children.
especially with a tiny tyrant growing up. Like, hey, if you keep jumping off the porch and everything, you're gonna get hurt. And
Yeah,
when she finally falls over and stuff and like skins her elbow or something, we're like, see, we told you this was gonna happen, so you need to start listening to us next time because we're older, we know better, we're
well,
able
yeah,
to think long term. So
yeah. And that's the thing, is like, very often in these situations where, like, the men, like, and to be fair, it goes the opposite way around too. I'm not denying that, where, like, you'll have these cases where these women, like these young underage women, will be literally texting their friends about, oh, I'm having sex with this, the third, like, there's this like 12, 13-year-old girl, and she's texting her friends saying that she's having this relationship with like the 30, 40-year-old male teacher, and
yeah,
like telling about it. And and I still say I want the dude's head on a platter, because the thing is, you're the adult in the room. You're supposed to be the one that says, nah, nah,
yeah, you're supposed to be the one that knows better.
yeah. You're supposed to be the one that says, look, no, this is not going to happen. This would ruin your life.
Yeah, this would ruin your life. It's gonna ruin my life. Like, it's just a bad idea all around. Like,
Yeah,
if you're a rational adult, like, this is at the point you go to like the principal or something and say, hey, this student is exhibiting this kind of behavior. I think it's time that y'all need to sit down with the parents and tell them what's going on.
yeah,
Like, I think if you were to be that kind of teacher, that's going to get you out of a lot of trouble long term. Like,
yeah,
yeah, you're going to come into question, obviously. But at the
yeah,
same time, like, if you're open and honest and saying, look, here's all my text messages, the kids have the number and everything in case they miss an assignment or, for whatever reason. I think Catherine, she's got some of the phone numbers for some of her teachers. And I think even the guidance counselor and whatnot. But at the same time, like, they would be able to turn that over and say, look, here's all the text messages. You can see that it was not me initiating anything. I was trying to shut this down. It's, this student didn't let me shut it down, so I'm turning it over to y'all.
yeah. And that's like, when you're a rational, healthy adult, you're supposed to be the one that you're supposed, especially you're a teacher, like, parents haven't get like parents in the school have specifically entrusted you. They've given you a level of, like, they're expecting you to take care of their children. So
Exactly. We are looking to these people to protect our child, I mean, from any kind of harm, which, I mean, even includes that they would inflict themselves.
yeah, and so to do that, like, it's wrong on multiple levels. Like, not out. I mean, even taking the fact that this is an underage child, and that's wrong itself. But you're also making a mockery of the entire profession, and you're going against everything that you took an oath for.
Well, I don't think teachers necessarily take an oath, but I think it's kind of an unspoken oath that, yes, you are supposed to be the protectors. Y'all are the ones there with them during the day, like when we aren't there.
Yeah. So
So,
that's
yeah,
how.
I mean, if something like this is going on, if students are behaving in that way and everything, it not only jeopardizes that student, but it jeopardizes you and the entire school too. So, You need
Yeah.
to be able to be the adult in the room and say, hey, this is not okay, and I'm going to put a stop to it.
Yeah. And that's where I think it comes down to really. It's that I think, I mean, when it comes to, like, I remember this one thing where it really enraged me. Like, this once, I can't remember their names, but this case was like literally, it was like a 12-year-old boy and this grown woman, I think she was like in her 30s, and she, like, statutory, like she raped the kid and the
Yeah,
little
I mean,
boy.
even if that kid, says yes and everything, he's 12 years old, 12, 13 years old. I'm sorry, they cannot consent because they don't really grasp what they're consenting to.
The thing is about it is that in this specific case, like, the child was, the boy was crying, and, like, obvious, like, you know, this kid was clearly, like, it was like
No,
no about,
non-consensual then.
yeah, very, like, I mean, it's non-consensual either way, but in this case
Yeah.
it's specifically even emotionally worse because the child, like, the little boy is crying over it. Like, they recognize they were literally taken advantage of. And what got me angry about it is that this woman literally called the home of the parents asking about the child that she sexually abused.
Now, see, this is where like the Dexter in me wants to come out. Because, like, that teacher's just going to disappear one day and nobody's ever going to know what happened.
Yeah. And
Ugh.
yeah, I've, like, that enraged me as well. And I was sort of like, I've said, I mean, I've said this perfectly. I said, the idea of hitting a woman does not cross my mind. I still take chivalry a bit seriously. I'm more lax on it now than I was years ago, but I don't get any joy in the idea of hitting a woman. But I will
Right.
say that if I found out that, if I knew for sure that a female teacher was abusing my son like that, you know what? I think anyone would rationally forgive me for letting chivalry go on that case.
I definitely would. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm going to get my licks in too.
Yeah. Um, and, like, I'm even, funny enough, I remember on Twitter where we talked about, like, I've said, if someone ever tried anything with Tiny Tyrant, I said, the guy better hope that the police catch him first.
Uh huh.
Because if you catch him first, yeah, he's gone.
Oh, I've always said that, like, I have plans in place. Like, God forbid something ever happens to her, but I can't talk about them on Twitter because I'll get suspended in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Like, I
Oh,
mean, I've got very, very graphically detailed plans in place.
yeah. Well, I've always said that, like, when it comes to, I said, they'll say, well, you can't judge them. And I'm like, oh, I'm not judging them. I'm just setting up an early appointment with them.
Yeah, I was about to say, I mean, I'm not the one judging them. Only God can judge. I'm just setting up the appointment. Like, I'm just gonna make sure that it happens.
Yeah.
I mean,
You know,
if I get a
it,
hold of him first, they're not gonna meet him for a good little while. Like, I'm gonna have my time with them first, but
yeah. And I mean, it is ridiculous when it goes over that sort of thing where there is a double standard. And I think a double standard that gets exaggerated is the stud and the promiscuous woman standard, where basically the thing is that where it says, well, men can have sex with lots of women and no one, and they're considered studs, whereas if a woman has sex with a lot of men, then they're bad. And that's the sort of stereotype that people get. I think that's a bit exaggerated because we do have terms for men that do that, like negative terms for men that do that.
I
For
was gonna say,
example,
as of
like,
right now, I think they're called fuckboys. So
well, that, and they also call them womanizers,
yeah,
and they call them heartbreakers. Those have been typical names that have gone for guys that have done that to women.
yeah, but it's still a little more glamorized for men than it is for women. I mean, no matter what, if a woman does it, she's considered a slut. So
Yeah,
it's just always bad, even if a guy's a heartbreaker or a ladies' man, even.
yeah.
Like it's kind of romanticized, it's glamorized a little bit more than it is for women.
I think what would make someone, like, I think for many men, what makes it more egregious, for at least how society sees it with people with men, is that if the man like deceived the woman, like into doing, like, he made himself look rich when he wasn't actually rich.
Yeah, the catfish thing. Yeah,
Yeah. Although I will say that if you're taking advantage of a shallow person, it just makes an ass out of both of you.
yeah, I think I could agree with that. I mean, if a woman's only going out with you, like you could be like a butt ugly guy or whatever, but if you say you're rich, that interest for a lot of women is going to perk up.
Yeah. And I mean, it's sort of like, on one hand, I think obviously the lying is wrong on the man's part. And on the other hand, I also have to admit, like, this woman literally cared nothing about this man's personality or anything. She just wanted to be with him for the money.
Right. Yeah, that makes her a gold digger. So it's
Yeah,
even bad on her part too. So
yeah. So on one hand, I just think it just makes them both look like an ass for that. And I've always just found it a bit funny how it works out like that, where I think where men are perceived more negatively if they're seen as, like, they made an obligation to a woman and she and he's not going through with it with the woman.
yeah, I think I can understand what you're saying there.
Yeah. And if there's and the thing that people often don't realize is that for men, it's not having lots of women that makes like makes a man a stud, really, and just culturally speaking. It's the quality of women that the man is able to get. Like, if you heard a guy, he had 50 relationships with 50 women, but they were all prostitutes, the dude's not going to be considered a stud.
No, not if they're not if he's paying for it. Absolutely not. He's kind of seen as pathetic.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's what people see a guy as a stud if, like, how perceived hard it was for him to get the women. Like, it would be a guy would look more like a stud if he got with, say, 50 women that were like you, Laura, than it would be if he got with just like 50 prostitutes or women, like really low value women.
So yeah, I mean, you're saying he would be considered more of a stud if he got someone who had self-respect and was not just easy and quick to jump into bed.
Yeah. I think that's how it goes down. Like, how people would, at least I think culturally, that's how it would go. And
I actually take that as a compliment that you see me as more of the high value woman that wouldn't do that. So thank you.
I'm honest. I mean, if I'm friends with you for a while, and you're a woman, it's obvious that I do think you're high value. I don't hang around lots of low value women. At
As I
least
said,
not any.
you've seen me. I mean, I get hit on Twitter occasionally and everything, and I take the compliment and everything, but I kind of gently rebuff the guy, like, that's I'm very flattered, thank you, but I am married, you know.
Which that's part of, in my opinion, being a high value woman. You know boundaries. You'll take a compliment, but you also know that this is the line. Do not cross it.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have that hard line, and If there are times, it's been very, very rare that Daniel's ever had to step in and say, hey, you need to stop.
Yeah.
Because usually I shut it down pretty quick, but it's only if they just don't listen.
Yeah. And that's perfectly fair. And I think these days dating is especially bad, like in real life, because like in the past, many men like it. This is how really dating would really work. A man would go up to a woman. He would say, "Hey, look, I think you're cute or whatever. You would want to go out with me." The woman would say yes or no, and if she said no, he's like obviously the man would say okay, and he's a little sad, but he walks away, and that's it. The entire
Yeah.
conversation lasts about 30 seconds, and that's the end of it. But nowadays, with some women, um, like with some women, like a man comes up to them and he just says, "Hey, look, I'm attracted to you, and would you like to go out for like, would you want to go out for coffee or something?" And then all of a sudden, the woman says, "Oh, you're a creep," and takes videos and just absolutely shames the dude for it.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that nowadays. Like, you get these women wearing like the very, very skimpy, skimpy clothes, like next to nothing to the gym, and then they're like, "Oh, this guy's staring at me." Well, no shit. Like, look what you're wearing. Like, I'm staring at you, and I'm a straight woman. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Um. I mean, and no, it's even funnier that I don't like. You could speak probably on this more than I could ever, but like for a man really know like when it comes like women seem to find married men more attractive than single men.
I don't know. I mean, I find my husband attractive, and he's a married man, but that's about it. But it probably goes more towards they see the stability that that kind of man offers, like the consistency, like he's always going to be there. He's stable, he's reliable. So that's what they find attractive. I don't know if it's necessarily the man or that he's married. It's just what the marriage represents.
Well, it's like this guy, he literally did this for a trick where he goes into a gym and like he shows us before, he goes in the gym, there's women there, and like no woman talks to him or does anything. And and the next day he goes into the same gym and stuff like that, but he changes one thing. He wears what looks like a wedding ring on his finger.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden a bunch of women start going up to him and asking him, and they would literally say stuff like, "Oh, well, she'll never know."
Well, you've got to keep in mind too that a lot of those videos that are posted, they're deceptively edited. They're going to edit out every single encounter that did not go the way they wanted to go. And
Oh,
they're going
sure.
to parse it down to the parts that they want people to see.
Yeah.
It's like those man on the street interviews. And maybe it's just me being entirely too Pollyanna about everything. But I just absolutely refuse to believe that most of our younger generation is actually as stupid as they come off in those videos. I think that they're just selecting the dumbest answers and editing that video down to where it only shows those answers. Like,
Well, you have to remember, Laura, we have a secular public school system.
see, that's very true. And that's why, like, I want to be very hopeful about this. But there's that part of me is like, yeah, but are you too hopeful here? Like, some of these
Well,
kids probably actually are that stupid.
yeah, like Winston Churchill actually made the argument that the best argument against democracy is simply asking the average person off the street their view on politics.
Yeah, we just we have so many, especially the younger generations now, and I think it is partly the public school system, partly social media being so prevalent with them. I mean, that's just such an easy way to reach them through ads and through their peers and everything. So I that's why I like our daughter's generation. Like, I just hope we're raising her to think critically about things and not just go along with what her friends or what the trends are saying or anything like that. So,
Well, from any indication from what I know you, I think you're a good mom.
we try to be good parents, but ultimately she is her own person and she's going to have her own thoughts and her own opinions. And,
Yeah.
we're not going to we can't control that. We haven't been able to control that basically since she was little. That's how she got the nickname Tiny Tyrant.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's your daughter after all.
That apple didn't fall very far from the tree, but I think I'm about to sign off here. She's about to go to bed, so it's closing in on 9:30 here.
All right. Well, it was so nice talking to you. This
I
video
know,
will be.
it's awesome.
I'll make sure to share it when it's posted. Well, it was nice to talk to you, Laura. We should
It was
definitely.
awesome talking to you. We'll have to actually do it more often. I think this is the third time I've been on.
Yeah. I mean, and obviously we've done like Zelda's
Yeah, we've done the spaces and whatnot before, so
yeah. So yeah, I definitely think we need to do stuff like this more often because I think overall, I think for whatever disagreements me and you may have on some issues, I think overall we agree more than we disagree.
we do. And
And
if we disagree, we're able to talk about it. I mean, we're adults, so
yeah, very professional manner. And but yeah, I mean, like I've always said, I honestly just stay. I do not want to be like in a cult where it's an echo chamber of just. I like the idea of being around people that disagree with me
yeah, that's what I've
because
always said. Like, I don't want my friends or followers or anybody to all just share the same ideas and views and opinions that I do, because that would be really boring after a while.
yeah. Well, it was nice talking to you. Yeah. Well, I'll make sure to post this up and I'll send you the link.
Yeah,
Can you
absolutely. I'll help promote it too. So,
can you tell the audience where they can find you?
I am Bumpstock Barbie on X. I write for Twitchy, and that link for my author page is in my bio. Daniel and we host Front Porch Forensics every other Saturday from 8 Central to 10 Central. I think that about covers it. He's Bumpstock Ken on X. So it's Bumpstock Barbie and Ken, so that's easy to remember.
All right. Glad to see you. I'm glad to talk to you guys. And yeah, so let's go and